Varmt välkomna till denna intervju med Morten Hennevald, vd på OssDsign's, som vi ska prata om en mycket bra kvartalsrapport. Morten, very welcome to Erik Penser Bank.
Thank you very much.
As
nice
always,
to be back.
we will start very briefly. Please just present OssDsign. What is it? What kind of company are we talking about?
So OssDsign is a upcoming player in the $53 billion orthopedic industry. We are today present in two different segments, in craniomaxillofacial with our cranial implant and in orthobiologics with our nanosynthetic bone graft. Today we operate in about 10 markets globally.
Perfect. Let me once again start with congratulations on a very, very strong report. 96% growth, 71% in constant currency is quite impressive. Let's dwell into the report. We do see that the US market is growing substantially for OssDsign. Please elaborate. What are the growth drivers and why is it growing right now?
Yeah. Well, clearly the biggest growth driver is that we launched our bone graft OssDsign Catalyst in August of last year, and you need to go through what's called VAC approvals, the hospital approval processes. They typically take 6-7 months, a little bit longer these days. But what you saw in Q2 and now heavy acceleration in Q3 is that we are starting to succeed with all of this, and we have an enormous interest from surgeons in trying the product. We also just posted some very strong post-market safety data for the first year. So I think we have a good story, we have a good product, and it's certainly accelerating the company right now. We're extremely pleased with that.
As you said, Catalyst is growing very, very rapidly. I think for investors, give a brief background on Catalyst and the marketplace. Spinal fusion operations is, there are a huge number, I think beyond 400,000 per year in the US, and it's a huge marketplace. Give us the market dynamics and why is Catalyst growing?
Yeah, so maybe just a little bit of background. So Catalyst is the product that we acquired when we acquired Sirakoss back in 2020. We spent about a year on getting it ready, and then we launched it in August of last year. Bone graft is a product that is used basically from head to toe in the various types of procedures. The reason you're using a bone graft is to stimulate bone growth when you're doing a procedure together with hardware. It can be screws or plates or cages or other things of that nature. So in most surgeries, in particular in spine, for spine it's almost 100%, you will always use some kind of graft to assist on the bone growth, to basically make sure you have a better outcome, you have less infections, you have no implant loosening and so on. So you can apply it in multiple places. We clearly chose to go after spine. It is by far, we also have in our corporate presentation, US market is worth $1.8 billion alone, just in orthobiologics. So it's a huge market. It's also a space that we know intimately well. From our previous lives, myself, people in the board, most of our US sales force actually have much more years of experience in spine and biologics than we do in cranial. So for us, it was a completely natural place to go. It has a good ASP. There is lots of standard procedures. So, it's very, very scalable.
You have also, during or right after the reported quarter, had some follow-up data on Catalyst. Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, no, it's something that we are extremely pleased with, of course. So we did our first, what we call first post-market safety report on Catalyst from launch in August until August of last year until August this year. 511 units had been sold during that period. We've had 4 complaints, none of which are any device related, and no adverse incidents, and ultimately that gives us a 0% device related complication rate. And why is this important? Well, with any new product you take to market, there's always a risk. There are examples also in the US marketplace of products that didn't perform and actually caused some harm. So safety is the #1 concern for surgeons when you launch a new product. It's the first question you get. I get it when I'm on road trips in the US, speaking to surgeons. Is it safe to use? Who else is using it? How many have been used? And I think this report very strongly supports the safety profile of the product, and it's reaffirming to those that have already chosen to use the product, and it will also be an assurance for people who intend to use the product, always thinking about it. So very meaningful.
And you will continue to support Catalyst sales with ongoing research and a registry, the Top Fusion and the Propel registry. Could you outline a bit what are these?
Yeah, I think it's important. At least it's important for us. I think the regulatory environment is also changing. There's a constant demand for more clinical data. So the week after we launched OssDsign's Catalyst, we started our first demand study in Hungary called Top Fusion. It's 17 patients for 15 valuable. That is going completely to plan. All patients are enrolled. We have 100% follow-up. And we actually just had the first patient coming in at 1 year. So it won't be a big statistical report on that because of the amount of patients, but we can follow these patients very, very closely, and we are already using that clinical data on the NDA with surgeons. So we even used it at our Congress last month in the US with some first human images of bone growth at 3 and 6 months. So that is extremely meaningful. We also have Propel. That has accelerated. We have a very big interest actually in trying the product and working with us in collecting clinical data, and we hit the milestone way ahead of time of 100 patients. So of course we want to keep accelerating that. The more patients we can get in, the more robust and the faster we can come with clinical evidence. So it is important to us to do it, and I think a positive side effect of that is we're getting lots of credits from surgeons that we're so serious about also proving things that we say, and that we are making some very real investments into also proving that the product works in a clinical setting. And at the same time, for me, we are also ensuring that we can keep coming out with data, both not just in the short term, but also in the medium to long term. So it's also an investment in the future, of course, for us.
We're seeing, not just from your report, but from other orthopedic companies, that the pandemic is losing its grip, so to say, on the elective procedure marketplace. However, we are having some reports that there is staff shortages when it comes to elective procedures. Elaborate a bit on how do you see these type of market dynamics going forward?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that we're seeing a loosening loosening grip on now. You're right, COVID may not be there. Latest data we have is that the US is still at index 70 in the elective surgery index. And just for context, it was also 70 in October of last year, right? So there hasn't been any improvement, and the staff shortages are quite systemic. So I wouldn't say that we've seen an improvement. We're seeing delays to VAC approvals like everyone else. So I often get the question that we're getting closer to normal. That's not what we're seeing. That's not what we are feeling. Many of our competitors came out in Q2 and those that have come in Q3 with not so pretty results either. So that's clearly indicating a continued depressed market. So that is the backdrop of which we are also achieving some of the numbers we are and reporting the results. And of course, that just makes me extra happy that we are able to navigate that environment so well.
For obvious reasons, we have covered a lot about the US market. I mean, it is by far the largest orthopedic market, and it's your largest geographical market already. Yeah. But how is the rest of your sales faring from a geographical perspective? Yeah. Let's touch a bit on Europe, and we also know that Japan were interesting when it comes to sort of more of the regulatory pathway. Could you touch on Europe initially and then what's happening in Japan?
I mean, because Europe is also a good highlight of Q3. We've been sitting in some, lower than acceptable growth rates, partly because of the market depression. We already saw early last year, we saw the UK market having a very, very poor outlook. So we decided to restructure our European sales force. We saw lots of opportunities in France. We've actually reallocated, and that reallocation has just been completed recently. Germany is still going strong. It's still our biggest market in Germany and then in Europe. And then we're seeing a very strong acceleration of France. You know, we won the most prestigious, the biggest contract in France earlier in the year. But we're also winning other tenders and other contracts. So France definitely would be one of the bigger incremental growth drivers outside the US. UK, we are managing so-and-so. We do not expect a big thing really to come out of UK in the foreseeable future. It doesn't look good in that market and the ability to deal with the aftermath of COVID.
And then also if you turn on your other product, which also showed healthy growth, Cranial Plug. Yeah. Elaborate a bit, what's happening there? What do you foresee in sort of sales development for that specific product?
You mean Cranial PSI?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's 24%. Would we like to see higher growth? Yes, and I think we also want to see that, and we need to see that in the future, clearly. Having said that, when we have this market depression, we do know that, and we see that biologics and spine procedures are a little bit more robust in downtimes, simply because a lot, you know, proportionally more procedures take place in private settings. Cranial PSI often is in the level 1 or 2 trauma centers, and that means it's often public hospitals. So we want to see more, but I think we also have to be realistic that it's not going to get into the growth numbers that we're seeing on Catalyst, at least not in the foreseeable future. But you know, we're coming out with updated post-market surveillance data. There is no other product like Cranial PSI in the marketplace. The clinical data completely speaks for itself. So of course we want to push that forward. It's a highly differentiated product. But yeah, it's always a little bit difficult with a product like that when you simply get lower on the priority list in the healthcare systems. But we're trying to navigate that.
Perfect. Let me turn back a bit to Catalyst. One of the questions I receive a lot about is scalability when it comes to Catalyst, and you know, we hopefully growing volumes. Once again, elaborate, touch upon that subject, please.
I mean, that was, I'm glad you bring it up. That was one of the primary reasons for actually getting into that business, to get more scalability. It is, as you can see, it is fully scalable. It's mass produced, where we do one, you know, it's a patient specific on cranial. We produce 300 at a time on Catalyst through a contract manufacturer that we're working with. When it comes to actually selling it, you know, it's a consignment product. So once you're approved and the surgeon wants to use it, you put it on the shelf. You of course educate and work with the surgeon, but then you actually move on, and then they will just replenish that consignment stock. So also from a sales force efficiency point of view, it's a lot more scalable, and we are already starting to see the impact it has on the company and specifically also on our sales force, that they're simply able to generate a lot more sales with the same resources.
My final question turns towards gross margins. Usually with these type of products, once sales start to grow, we also see a healthy margin expansion of gross margins. I won't dwell into the details, but can we anticipate at least that if we do see some really good sales development, increased volumes, you will also see gross margin improvements? Would you concur with that?
No, absolutely. You know, we don't disclose gross margins, at least not right now. But clearly, just mathematically, you have two businesses where one is much higher gross margin, and as that starts to become a bigger proportion of the company, then clearly that is also what you're seeing. So if you take the third quarter here, Catalyst was about 38% of sales. If you look at it from a contribution point of view, it's probably 50-50 already in the company. So of course, as Catalyst becomes a bigger and bigger proportion of sales, then we're going to benefit from a positive product mix, and we're going to benefit from a positive geography mix, because it's also coming from the US. And ultimately, those two things, of course, will be accretive to future gross margins, clearly.
Perfect. I think there I've concluded with my questions. Is there something I missed, something you want to add before we close the interview?
There are many things I want to add. I can talk all day. No, I just think it's important to recognize that we're really turning a corner. We've clearly turned a corner in the trajectory of the company, where we have a stronger product offering, we have more scalability in the business, we've made numerous changes over the last couple of years, and I think we're really starting to see, we are still in the beginning, but we're really starting to see the outcome of that hard work. So of course we feel very confident about the future, and we are extremely pleased with the results that are coming in right now.
Well, I can just congratulate you. It was an immensely strong quarter, and it was a delight to have this interview. Thank you very much, Morten.
Thank you.